Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to Under 911S. Got a little bored today. It's in the middle of winter time, not enough snow to go sledding, too old to play hockey. What do? Get on the interweb, start surfing. Well, I fell upon updates on stereos for our Porsches and thought I'd dive into it. So let's have at her. Okay, so whether you have a 986, 987, 996, 997, this might help you out. Your radio head could be a CDR24, a PCM 2.1, either a BOSE or a non-BOSE, doesn't really matter. Just main factor is to get the right wiring harness and the stereo you like. So let's take this out of hibernation and get at it. Always nice to get a helping hand if you can. Sometimes you gotta bribe them. This is the case here with Prosecco. There you go. All right. Are you here to help or just make a mess? Can't choose your neighbor's dogs. Okay, so at this point, we're going to get set up to put the backup camera in. We're going to lift it up, make it a little easier to take the bumper off. If you don't have a hoist, don't sweat it. As long as you can lift it up high enough to take the back wheels off. Taking the bumper off may sound a little daunting, but it's really not that bad. And it'll just give it a more factory look. We're going to put it right center top here. It's black, a nice shiny black. It'll match the scripts here. So let's get on with that. All right, so prior to removing the bumper, one of the things you're going to want to do is protect the leading edges of your paint. What you want to do is put in some masking tape here, get it right in the crack, because that's where it'll chip. So there you go. No danger of any paint chips. Same on the other side and anywhere else you think you might knock it. I always start off by taking the lug off with the key, the first one. That way there, if it ends up being the last one, you're kind of fiddling with it and the wheel wants to kind of fall off on you. Just makes it easier when it's when you're installing, especially you're trying to maneuver that very last one. So now you just have a regular socket to deal with. All right, now here's why we took the wheel off. You could squeeze in there without, but for your viewing pleasure, there's a T30, a Torx 30 right here. You want to remove that on both sides, as well as these little guys underneath, also a T30. If you decide not to take the wheel off, I'll just show you the angle here for that 30 Torx bit. So there's about the angle you'd be looking at. We're going to want to raise the rear wing to access a couple of bolts. All right, what we're looking at here is just behind the tail lights. A little quarter turn on this fastener here, and we'll have access to the back. Watch not to lose these little alignment pins. Should be two of them. Oh, one remained here. Sometimes they come with it, sometimes they don't. Okay, before you loosen anything, let's disconnect the electrical connector here. Simply squeeze. Squeeze these little tabs and pull a little bit. So there's 3/8mm nuts. If you just crack them loose, you'll be able to unscrew them by hand. You might need a short 8mm to access the furthest one back here. Quarter turn or so is enough to just start loosening them with your fingers. So we'll be taking out the rear tail light lenses, putting those aside, and here we have it. As easy as that. That'll enable us to take out some more 30 Torx. So you have a 30 Torx here. You have another one right here. Now there's a plate. It's like a big square washer that accompanies that for this upper one here. This one here is just the screw itself. And here's a close-up of that retention washer. Retains a little tension up here. Now before you remove the bumper, you may want to take note that the horizontal plane here is actually set at a little bit of an angle. So it's actually at about 2.5, maybe 3 degrees upward. So you may want to consider that when you're mounting your camera. They have different shims to get the right profile. Okay, so we raised the rear wing and we're going to remove the 620 Torx screws that are on the front side of the wing, right up in here. That will allow us now to take the front of the top of the spoiler off, leading us access to those 13 millimeter maybe nuts inside here. There's just one on each strut rod. And there you have it. Put all that in a safe place. 30 Torx screws underneath the vehicle. You've got one here, one there behind the wheel. Alongside the exhaust here, number 3, number 4, 5, and 6. And we've already removed the ones further up there in the wheel well. All right, so those 6, the ones in the wheel wells, the 2 on each side of the inside the head tail lights, almost there. Just a little word of caution, those 6 Torx underneath the bumper, the 2 center ones near the exhaust, they're fine thread, so you don't want to mix them up with the coarse ones here. So we removed the 2 30s in the tail lights on each side, 2 here, 2 by the exhaust, the ones in the upper wheel well. Just add a bit more tape on the rear right here. Don't want to damage those holes. All right, we're ready to pull it out. Just take your time. You don't want to lift a little bit here. There we go. There's going to be some electrical connectors to remove, so we can't go too far here. There'll be some for the license plate light, and if you have backup sensors as well. So we cantilever that upward. Now the license plate light connector. Press that little tab. Prepared a blanket on the floor to rest it on. There it is. So now we'll be able to access the back and drill a hole and put our backup camera right in here, right up in here, and run the wires in through the vehicle. Now that the bumper is removed, here's a few little tidbits. There's actually behind the license plate a threaded hole if you want to put your anchor point, if you want to tie it down in a trailer or need to pull it out of the rhubarb. Oh, and here's the emergency trunk release cable. A little hard to reach. I guess maybe you can come up from here. We're in the trunk behind the rear tail lights, and pretty simple little quarter turn here. And there's a stud in the plastic here, so pull it towards the center of the vehicle. You'll want to take your electrical connector off by pressing that tab. Then you'll see your 3 8mm nuts there, and one back here. I used a deep socket here, deep 8mm, shallow 8mm for those 2, and your tail light lens will come right out. So we're going to have to run the rear camera wire to the front head unit, of course. So we're going to come along and use this OEM grommet right here. There's a lot of different paths you can take. I chose to go behind the left driver's side rug right here. Very easy to remove that. And then behind you see a good place for a ground. And we're going to continue on. That was step 1. We'll continue on going up through here. Okay, step 2, we're going to remove this piece of carpeting here. Just lift from the bottom here. And there we have it. Next, step 3, we're going to remove the top engine cover. I like to maybe place a rag where the plastic is here and use a little plastic spoon to help pull that out sometimes. All right, and here we go. I'm gonna wedge this under a little bit. There you have it. Once you get it started, you're home. Now that the engine cover is removed, we'll be fishing the wire up towards the rear speaker, coming out somewhere around here, staying away from the engine bay. We'll remove the front cover, front engine cover, and make our way down underneath the carpet of the driver's seat. Thought I'd take a minute and show you what I bought as far as what we're going to use to install this. The backup camera I chose on the internet after looking at a bunch of reviews there. I chose Cool Int. I seem to like some of the features it had. I didn't want anything with LED lighting around it. That would have made it a little bigger and bulkier. Maybe one more thing to go wrong with it. So I chose this guy here. They claim that it shows very well without the help of LED lights at night. It's a company called Cool Int. I'm not sure if we're pronouncing that right. But anyways, came really quick. Real nice packaging. Let's get to the camera itself here. Yeah, so it's nice and heavy. Some type of a real shiny black acrylic. I like the idea that it's got a real small connector here. And the stud also is nice and small, so you don't have to drill a big monster hole. So that's nice. Also, if we open this little guy up here, it comes with different gaskets. They're wedged at different angles. So you can go from a 0 angle to mount it, or you can increase your angles, or in a real bad situation, maybe add 2 of them. So you can pretty much get the viewing angle that you're looking for. They give you these little connectors here. If you need to get battery power or backup power, I should say, or ground or whatever, they give you these little Scotch lock things. Not a big fan of them. Some people like them because they're quick, but here's what I do. A lot of guys in the trade will also do this. The wire that you're trying to tap into, will simply open it up, cause a little opening here. There we go. Okay, so we just cause a little opening. If you don't have this tool here, you could simply take a razor blade, walk around it without cutting the copper, back up another 1/2 inch, walk around it again, and then make a slit over top, and you'll be able to pull the insulation off. But simply poke through the middle of it. So now you still have a nice strong cable wire without cutting it to try to merge your other wire into it. So now that you've poked through with either a test light or a pick, you can take your wire that you want to use and just sew through it like that. Wrap around. Make a good solder on this. And I like to use liquid rubber and then go over it with electrical tape. You got a solid waterproof connection that'll last for years, and you'll have very little, if no resistance at all on that connector. Initially, I was planning on running the camera wiring through the large grommet at the rear, which goes to an electrical junction over here. But on second thought, I decided I'm gonna remove the rest of this carpeting. Removing carpeting on this vehicle is quite easy. As opposed to some of the trim pieces, if we're lifting trim to run the wiring, some of this gets actually a little brittle. You risk breaking some of the retaining clips. So as much as possible, I'm going to try to resist popping off a lot of this trim. Hopefully we can snake it through by merely removing carpeting. So as far as the trunk carpeting goes, let's start off by removing the carpeting at the very rear. This about a 5-inch piece here. So there's nothing holding that. This is, again, don't lose these little guys for that last little piece of plastic trim that goes in the corners. Now the carpeting here, you've got these ringlets. You can just push them down out of your way. The corner ones, the carpet is slotted, so that's not going to be a problem. Let's get this corner guy out. See how easy that comes out. And now the floor carpeting of the trunk. There we go. We ended up deciding on using a larger grommet here after all. You may have come into this problem before where you got a hard time running a wire through an original grommet. I've even seen people make a slice here. You really don't want to do that. That's hard to seal. It's always easier to seal the original factory nipple. I'm going to remove this grommet just for demonstration purposes. So what I've used is a Any kind of tube will do, like a piece of 3/8 tranny line or whatever. I used a gun off of a spray foam can. Cut the nipple off a little larger, ran a slot down it. So now you've got something rigid to work with. So you're able to come alongside the original wiring, poke it through like this. I guess I just took it off, but you could do this on the vehicle. So now it's back installed how you would normally approach it. And you see where we're going now. You could easily take your wiring and slide it through. And once it's slid through here, oops, oh, that's in the way there. All right. So once you've slid it through, you can pull your tube back out and simply remove your wiring. And you've got it right alongside. Now you can tape up the protruding nipple nice and tight and no danger of any leaks. All right, you'll notice on the camera harness there's 2 wires protruding here. Some cameras will have a switch. I prefer the wires because there's less parts, less things to go wrong. In this case here, you cut the green wire, that'll remove the parking lines. If you cut the white wire, you can use this camera as a front camera, the mirroring effect that it has, front and rear. So simply create an open by cutting and taping it up and you're good to go. So it's multi-function camera. You can use it for a back camera or a front one. So that's a good little feature there. So we're at the dreaded point of drilling a hole through our bumper. So you want to take a little bit of precaution. I put some tape here that'll make it a little easier to make our marks. Make sure we're smack dead center. I'm going to place the camera as far back as I can. It is as close to the license plate as possible, just so that it's not so blatantly obvious that there's a camera there. If you were to stick it on the outer edge, you'd see it that much more. You know, we may lose a little bit of the peripheral here. Not really sure on that, but it's a price I'm willing to take just to sneak it in there a little deeper. So let's measure this out here. It's going from license plate light to license plate light screw, which is about 6 1/8. So let's mark this off at 3 1/16. And let's go 3 1/16 from here, just to make sure. Let's make a line right across here. Just to make sure we clear the license plate, we'll be on the high side of that. So I'm going to start off with a real small drill bit so it doesn't start walking around. That'll be a little bit of a pilot hole. Then I'll go to the 1964 drill bit, and if need be, I'll go to the 5/16. Ooh, that hurt. I can probably squeeze it in, but you know what? We're going for 5/16. Boom. So that's the look we're going for. I think the nut in behind is actually stainless steel, which is another nice feature with this camera. I've seen on reviews of other ones where it's actually a plastic nut. And the magnet doesn't stick, so we got a nice stainless steel nut here that'll never corrode or break as you go to snug it up. All right, so I ended up not using any of the little angled wedge gaskets that they gave you. I'm just going to use the zero wedge. It's just a piece of foam, so make sure you sew that through your wiring before you stick it into place. It's just stuck onto place there, and we'll put that stainless steel nut and lock washer in behind. All right, so here's what it looks like from the back side. Little stainless steel lock washer and nut. For all my viewers out in Europe, there's a 14mm wrench, and stateside, probably a 9/16 would work there. Leave a little bit of slack back here. We'll trim those off. Make sure we didn't disrupt, that we're still square here. All right, so you may have noticed that I decided not to retract my wing posts. I left them up there because I'm alone, and it'll help to hold it on. It doesn't fall off if it gets away on me. I just put a bit of masking tape here to protect it, protect the paint. So I'm kind of starting a little on an angle here, like when I took it off. Get it over them wing posts. Now it's not going to fall to the ground when I turn my head for a second. Okay, now I can put my wiring in. Put the camera cable through that straw. And I can pull the straw out now that it's inserted. So there's that. And the license plate light is quite easy to reach here as well. A little closer each time we go from one side to the other. Work it in nice and slowly, no panic. Take your time here. A little bit of pulling forward here. Line up these two guys here as you're getting closer and closer. Oh, the inner fenders here, the plastic in the inner fenders. Let's check this inner fender. Line these up just before you tighten your 30 Torx. Line that up nice and flush. Snug them down. So all right, at this point here, I'm only going to put two T30s in just to hold it in place. Once I get the head unit in, test the camera, and make sure it's at the right angle in case we have to wedge the angle a bit. So just two of them to hold it, make sure it doesn't run away on us. We'll put all the rest of them in when we're assured that the camera's at the right angle. And to help with the alignment, you can also use the markings from the washer. When you've removed it, it left a mark. So I always like to line up those paint marks, those indentations that it left from the factory. Got a little bit of wiggle room that you can adjust those paint marks to be put right back to the original spot. All right, so in behind the tail lights, there's these plates that are mounted in a specific manner. They kind of rock in underneath and pull the bumper into the body. It's a tight spot. I'll try to get in there with the camera. As you put your 30 torque in, it'll actually pull the plastic bumper in that much tighter. You want to make sure that it's hooked in such a manner to pull the bumper in tighter, like that. So we're going to start running the rear camera wire up to the front. And we're going to do that from the passenger side. We're fastening it as we go along. There was a sharp metal edge here, so we put some cloth electrical tape on there. Added protection there. And we're going to run this wire up behind the rear shock tower. I ran a zip strap already here, and it was quite easy to do. We'll tie the wire onto this zip tie here and pull that behind the shock tower, and then we're going to make our way behind these brackets, heading down towards the front engine compartment. We'll remove the carpeting behind the front engine compartment and take that passenger seat out. It's only 4 bolts and a couple of plugs. It's not a big deal. Easier to do it on the passenger side because you don't have the steering wheel in your way. All right, so we're underneath again. We're going to fasten the one in the wheel well. These guys here. I was talking about this before, but I'll just reiterate. I don't know if you could see this on camera, but there's actually a mark. There's actually a mark where that 30T used to be. So you can manipulate your plastic to line up with that before you do your final tightening. Put it exactly back where it was. Just as easy. And don't forget the ones near the exhaust, those are fine thread. Those are the only 2 fine threads that are going to be mounted underneath. So you've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 underneath. Here we go. Now these are going into metal nuts, but all the other ones I put in by hand because they're only plastic retainers behind. All right, let's get it off the hoist so that we could take the passenger seat out. Just bottom them out. because we're going to throw the torque wrench on that. You always want to torque your wheels, otherwise your wheel's only hanging on by the one tightest nut or bolt. Let's do 120 here, 120 foot-pounds. All right, okay, we're getting closer with our wiring towards the front here. We still have it attached to our zip tie. So our next step is going to be to remove the front of the engine cover. Now, in order to do that, I flipped both seats forward and also ran the passenger seat all the way to the front. And there's simply held down with a couple of torque nuts. They're inverted nuts. There, the size of them are, they're E12s. So we've got access to those with the seat all the way forward. So we're going to zip them off, back up the seat, and take the two in the front out. Pretty straightforward here. Of course, there'll be a couple of plugs to disconnect. So we still have power. We haven't disconnected the battery yet, but we will before we start playing around with the radio. So those are the two torques right there. And let's bring the seat all the way to the back, and that'll allow us to get inverted torques in the front under this plastic cover here. All right, we're at the front of the seat now on the passenger side. Lift this little tab slightly upward and pull that back, and there you have access to that inverted torque socket. And the same goes for the other side here, of course. Oops. All right, hold that up a bit and slide forward. Give you access there. And because the seat's all the way at the back, you've got easy access to these plugs. And now I will be disconnecting the battery and also giving the vehicle a few minutes to power down before I unplug any of this. You don't want any airbag issues, so make sure your battery is powered down. Everybody probably knows where the battery is, under the frunk, but just in case, there it is. It's only necessary to take one side of the battery off, and we take the negative side off. You'll notice most people do take the negative side off instead of the positive. Why is that? Well, if you're doing the positive side, there's a chance that you may inadvertently bring your positive to ground and cause a spark. And if there's any gases, it'll make a big boom. Really big boom. Nice and gently. There you go. Now let's come around here and look at those connectors now that it's out of the vehicle. So one of the connectors, push on the little tab. This one here for the airbags. Whenever you see yellow, extra caution, that has to do with the airbags. Pull the release out. Like so. And in the vehicle, you've got this connector here with a little red release tab. What you want to do is pull this guy out, this little slider here. Now we'll have a lot of room to, once our cover is off from the engine, we'll easily be able to slide the wiring underneath the seat and underneath this panel, which we'll remove, and up towards the radio head. So let's get the carpeting off of the front of the engine here. I like starting from the bottom and pull down. Pull down. There we go. All right, we're going to be running we could have just ran our camera wire down through here like this, but we're going to get it completely out of the way by going a little more towards the outside here by the wheel well. We'll run another zip tie up here that we can attach. Okay, so we managed to run a second zip tie up this way, attach it to our first one, which is connected to the camera wiring, and we're gonna pull all that through to get it completely out of the way. There we go. So we're keeping everything to the right of the vehicle here for a nice clean look. Okay, so now that we've run it alongside the front of the engine, we're gonna stick it underneath the panel right by the seat belt area. I should mention that I only pulled out enough of this wire that we figure we're gonna need. The rest we're gonna button up by the rear tail light. So we can just lift the carpet up here now and take our good old zip tie, which I'm going to trim, lift our carpet up, and we're almost to the front. That'll be right out of sight there. And this guy, let's get rid of this panel here. Okay, this little guy here, you just lift upward and pull it out. And just as I thought there'd be, there, that's a T25 in behind that little vent. Pull out the power outlet plug. What's that, another T30? Yeah, that's a T30. This is a 2008, by the way, this came in. That's removed. What else we got here? There. We pulled it towards the back of the vehicle, and out that came. Squeeze and pull out this connector right here. That's part of the BOSE system. Okay. So now we're there without taking any trim, just carpeting. All right, just a quick recap on where we ran the wiring for that backup camera. There was a grommet in behind here, which brought us inside the trunk, and we ran it towards the passenger side. And you'll notice we bundled up the extra wiring we had. We bundled it up here instead of in front. There's not that much room in behind the radio head, so let's pile up them wires back here, extra long, in behind the rear shock tower, alongside the engine compartment here, and down towards the front of the engine firewall, down in here. Then we went underneath the carpet, underneath the seat, and up by that vent in behind to get us in behind the stereo. All right, we're reinstalling the carpet in the trunk. The first piece is the bottom large piece. I ran a piece of wire through the anchor loop so that we could just, let's see here, so we can just pull through the wire here and get the loop to come through like that. Just makes it a little easier. So just loop a couple of wires on your anchor loops, and that'll help you out there. You may remember when we were removing the rear wing, we used a power tool, power impact. We're going to put that in by hand now. A little bit of electrical tape there will help retain your nut in the socket. There's a little bit of jiggle room that you have to adjust the wing, final adjustment. So I'll just try to center that for now. There, nice and snug. And you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws to put the final cover on. All right, like I was saying earlier, there's a little bit of adjustment for the rear wing on those two nuts. So just double check before you put your final colored piece on. See how your adjustment is. So that looks nice. So we can raise it and put our colored piece on now. Oh, you missed out on a whole lot of fun a while ago. Those 7 screws, by the way, they're T20 screwdriver you're going to need. Don't drop those on the ground if you got a black speckled floor. Not good. All right, I ended up using a socket instead of the screwdriver. Just gives you a better angle of approach to tighten those 20 Torx. Let's try it, see how it lines up. Yep, pretty much even all across. There you go. All right, in the last video we showed how to remove the paneling on the other side of the radio. This one here is even easier, just 130 torque. Removes that. And in behind there, there's another one. But they're not going to use the same size now, are they? Let's try our luck at a T20. So there's a T20 Torx to remove this paneling. Okay, we're on the right side and it's the same thing. And we still haven't reinstalled the passenger seat from running the rear camera wires underneath the carpeting. So that allows us a little more room to work around here. Slide it forward. There's one clip on the very top. Just be careful, rock it a little bit. Use a little pry tool here to help us pull that side panel towards the rear. There we go. Very tight. Winner. Okay, so now we have these springs on 2 on each side that need to be compressed, and we do that with an Allen key. It's a 5mm Allen key, and as you turn it counterclockwise, that's about almost a quarter turn, it depresses that little spring holding it in. So there's one here, there's one above it, and of course on the other side as well. So let's, and there'll be even less room on the passenger side. Let's go have a look. All right, so there's one here. That one's good, counterclockwise. One above it. Let's open up the glove box. All right, a lot easier than I thought that was gonna be. So after you've went counterclockwise on that 5mm Allen key, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the top, we've got to contend with this little 7mm bolt right here, 10 miles long. Do we have to go all the way out? No, we don't. Watch not to scratch any of your control buttons. Simple tabs on the sides. All right, let's bring this to the bench and show you what was going on here. So of course those are just typical press-in tabs and all that. If you got fiber out, be careful not to bend or kink any of those. All right, in case the lighting was bad and couldn't really see too good, basically there's little tabs here that have to be depressed, and you go in with a 5mm Allen key and you give it about a quarter turn. So, oops, see it go in and out. So counterclockwise, depresses the spring clip, and then right about here somewhere there's a 7mm bolt that you unscrew about 3/4 ways, and she slides out, and it's typical connectors there. So there's the cable from the backup camera that we ran underneath the carpeting. So we're ready now to plug in our adapter harness. So we've got the radio removed, we've got the wire for the rear backup camera. What else do we have to bring into this hole? Well, the microphone and the satellite antenna, or the GPS antenna. So we removed the battery out of the front, and we ran the 2 antennas, one for the GPS and one for satellite radio. In behind the battery there's a grommet. So we removed the grommet, ran the 2 wires through the grommet, through the insulation, and you're actually quite close to the radio head at that point, so you're not using too much wire. You can bundle it all up underneath here where there's plenty of room, instead of in behind the radio where room is at a premium. So of course we'll be reinstalling the grommet and using black silicone to seal all that up. And the 2 antennas you see taped there might look a little unsightly, but once the front is closed, I'll show you what it looks like. So here you have it. You don't see too much of the antennas there. It kind of blends in with the black. Some people might like them there, some not. Another option is to keep them at the same location, but instead of over top of the plastic, underneath the plastic. Some guys say you still get reception. Not sure, maybe you can chime in on that. Just sneaking them underneath the plastic, totally out of sight, might be an option. So once you've run the backup cable into the trunk, we're going to connect the signal wires to activate the camera to the reverse light. So we're going to unplug the left rear tail light, check for power here. So we have it in reverse with the key on, and oh, we got power here.
no other power. So the third one, which is black and blue, we'll be tapping into that. We'll be tapping into that guy there. And for power, signal power to the camera. And that'll be red. And then the black wire, we'll put it to this ground post right here. All right, so let's get busy connecting that signal wire, camera signal wire. So we're gonna go down past this OEM covering here. We can access that black and blue wire down over here. We're not going to cut right through. We're just going to take the insulation apart. We're not going to use one of those Scotch lock connectors. Instead, we're going to make a solder here. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, like that. Just going to sew that through like this. Yeah. Even my old eyes get lucky sometimes. So once we've pierced through, we've sewn it through, put a nice solder on there and insulate it properly. But while I got you on film, let's do the ground as well. Handy little ground post right here. Take off quite a bit of insulation off this ground here, and reason being it's fairly small wire. So we're going to fold it back, make it that much thicker at the connector. There's a seam on these little connectors. I never like piercing through the top of the seam. I like to do the piercing part at the back. It just seems the connector seems to hold up better that way. Found that if you pierce it from the top side, it tends to spread them open sometimes, whereas that way there, everything stays intact. We'll tidy all this up with some black canvas electrical tape when we're done soldering. There you have it. Make sure the battery's disconnected when you're doing that. I don't know if we could zoom in enough there, but we've got a little dab of solder in place. And we'll just give it a little bit of liquid tape here. I especially use this when it's outside the vehicle, but had it handy here, so why not? That'll just take a minute or so to dry, and we'll cover it up with electrical tape. Okay, so we ran our wires to the head unit, which we've removed. So we've got backup camera wires going to the head unit, as well as satellite wires going there and GPS wires. So we're ready to put our interface wiring harness in, and then our head unit. So I've received the interface pre-wiring kit. Some stuff you don't need if you got the newer model, but this is maybe good for the older ones. What do we got? Antenna adapter, interface wiring here. Yeah, so you've got a little module here to help us out. Insulation brackets that'll sandwich the side of your radio with some screws. Okay, here we got a module that'll look like it'll interface with our fiber op module here. So you connect I presume didn't look at the instructions yet, but your fiber op will connect into here. This guy here into the box, and I guess these into your radio head. We'll go into detail after. Also got the silver fascia that goes with your new stereo. Oh, so the company I chose for this was In-Car Tact. So let's see here. One of the reasons why I chose these guys here, I made sure to make a note that you don't have to run
an ignition power up from your fuse box up to the head unit. This should interface with your original CAN bus system. Yeah, so stuff like that. Oh, also I noticed right here is speed pulse. So that's always an interesting topic. Speed pulse basically to give you a little bit more precision on your GPS system. It knows how fast the vehicle's moving down the road. If your satellites get a little funky under bridges, I guess, or you're in a real busy intersections or whatever, it just gives you that much more precision on your GPS. If we're able to use speed pulse, that'll be a real bonus there. So all right, we're gonna prepare the radio head for installation. There's a million choices of heads to choose from. That's what's nice about today's options. The one I took was the Kenwood. It's the Exelon reference. They claim a little bit better sound quality with the reference lines, so I chose that. We're going to take this outer casing off and install these side plates. They give you little keys, part number on the outside. Just slide them in to release the little locking tabs. That should enable us to slide this outer case out like so. I'm not going to be using that. We're going to be fastening these little puppies here onto the sides. You'll notice that one side is somewhat concave to give you a flush fit. You got several little packs of screws, but the ones you're going to want are the ones that'll recess in these side plates. Okay, so we're gonna prep these side brackets and the front fascia for installation. They're indicated left and right, pretty straightforward. They're recessed to accept the recessed screws here. So here we go. There's little passages here, little clips that fit in like so. Simply put that over. They're gonna give you, it's slotted, so they're gonna give you a little bit of jiggle room to do some final adjustments. All fits in nice. We'll add the rest of the screws in a minute, but basically that's what it's going to give you, and a place for the to accept the track. Yeah, that's what you get. Okay, so here I'm in the process of mounting the microphone. For the location, I chose above the A-pillar. It's closest to your mouth, and I think once we're done, it'll be fairly stealth. So I'll come around the other side and show you what we're doing. So here I'm using a canvas type electrical tape. It'll serve two purposes. It'll keep the wire from getting snagged anywhere, and seeing that we pulled off the rubber seal, it'll help grab onto that seal when we go to push it back in, because it's a coarse canvas finish to it. So I just to say I got it on the metal here, so that we'll be able to hold the wire in and just fold all this back and keep everything in place. And we'll simply just run it down above the kick plate towards the head unit. All right, this is what it looks like inside the vehicle. I just put a tie wrap around the microphone, left the tail of it sticking out, and so that way there you can just tuck that in like that. Okay, so they do supply a couple of USB outputs. I put them here just temporary. We're going to order in a mounting kit and probably install it somewhere in the console here. Maybe there's there's a lighter here that I never use, so maybe we'll mount a more permanent fixture there for the USB. But if you do want to hardwire it in, if you want to hardwire your phone in, there is the option. Okay, so originally I was going to bring you into the car and show you how to wire it up physically. It's a real rat's nest and it's hard to display on the camera. So I'll just take you through it here on the little wiring schematic that they provide. It's pretty basic. A lot of it is plug and play. Plus, of course, you're gonna plug in your camera feed. I got camera feed through the RCA cable, gave me a signal wire as well to connect to this signal output of the radio, and you're going to connect your antenna, of course, and all that. To power it up, you're going to tap in, and that's what I'll show you here. Tap into the harness that they provide. Basically, with those wiring interface packages, you're going to get this interface box here, and that's of course for your fiber op. And you're also going to get this little module here, which will allow you to have ignition key power without having to run down to the fuse box. So this module and this module are going to plug into each other. You're then going to take this harness, plug it into your original OEM connector, and you are going to take some of the real basic wires and tap into the harness, and that's your basic battery power and ground. And I did show you a little segment where we splice into a wire without actually cutting right through. You could rewind and look at that. Pretty simple as far as putting in the radio. Well, you've already seen how we take it out. We just put it back in the reverse order. So that's pretty straightforward. We'll go in and take a look at some of the functions of the radio now. So here we go. We just insert the key, and that module we spoke of is gonna automatically fire up the radio. I'll just show you this for a minute. You're gonna get some warnings here that PASM and ABS and all of that. That'll clear up once you start rolling. That's because we had the battery disconnected. So what we want to do is something similar to the original radio, where you get a display of something a bit more personal instead of the generic radio display. We'll be able to customize that to whatever you want to put on there via a USB. Again, you got to format it to the proper size. It won't automatically fit the screen, so Joelle is going to do that for us. Whether or not we have time to do it before this video gets launched, I'm not sure, but like I was saying a while ago, if you go onto your menu screen and you go onto your camera setup here, display, ignore that. Yeah, so get onto wallpaper customizing, and yeah. So I got my son Joey here. He's going to show us some of the functions of the radio.
Okay, so now that you've put the key in the ignition, you'll have a warning sign that's prompted that you can disengage by pressing that you agree to, or after 10 seconds it will then disappear on its own. The main home screen identifies that there's no disc in play, but the other options that you have to choose from is if your phone is synced to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, or directly hardwired with your cell phone. So if you were to click on navigation, Apple CarPlay. So this is my current phone that's synced through Apple CarPlay with my contacts. Also, some apps that are indicated on the left are the telephone prompt app, XM satellite radio, or the iPhone maps. You can also navigate through contacts in the keypad and voicemail yourself. If we go back to the home button, if you're an Android user, you can then prompt the Android Auto and connect your phone via USB, or pair with your wireless Bluetooth capability from Android. Also, like I mentioned, if you're directly connecting the telephone to the car, you can then prompt the telephone this way, or using through Bluetooth. Once again, these are the apps that are connected with my cell phone, so music that I do have on my phone can be played here. The iPhone Maps is then connected to this screen. If we go back here, these are other apps that you can navigate from your phone using the Bluetooth. You can navigate through text message, podcasts, audiobooks, or music synced to your phone. And if we go back to the home screen here, other methods, other displays that we could use here is if for screen adjustments. Screen adjustments can be increased or decreased for more or less light when you're driving at night. If we return back button, you can also have the display also if you're driving and you want no visual light coming at you at night, you can have that screen go black and just the time indicated in the top right. Camera, this is be your reverse camera that is connected once the vehicle is started. And there you have it. 3 indicating bars, furthest, closer, closest. So far as the setup displays, you can again connect hardwire through your AV displays. Bluetooth, connect a second phone, third phone. Can be done that way with your Bluetooth turned on your smartphone. The navigation here, you can select to have the navigation muted or on. Audio, specializing in the certain sounds that you'd like to have. You can also adjust them manually. You can select whether you want different modes of pop, easy, top 40, and once again you can modify those manually yourself. Audio memory. Zone control. Again, here you can manually input that data yourself. Sirius satellite radio, Bluetooth, iPod, USB. If you have a preference for certain higher than others, you can do those individually. You can also adjust where you want to direct the sound, whether it be through your front cockpit or in the back.
Yeah, that's in some vehicles. We lost the rear fade in this vehicle. That should be noted. That's a common thing with the BOSE system when you're interfacing. Has to do with just the 2 signals.
And if you desire to say
Channels.
use the CD or DVD eject button here to start, and then you can open. It'll then accept DVD or CD and close on its own. Once the disc is inputted, it will then prompt you to play. We'll go to a large full screen and then prompt you to press play.
Oh yeah, we got
Full
the
screen display.
yeah we got the audio out right now. Copyright. Blah,
And
blah, blah.
so on. Then to stop, you can pause, disk eject.
There's an SD slot there as well.
Once no disk is found, you can then select if you'd rather use your Apple CarPlay, direct music from your smartphone. Other tabs will be displayed from the smartphone that you are using. Wireless monitoring, USB monitoring, SD card.
And there's 2 USB outputs on the side there. I won't show it.
What was I going to say?
That's about it. Sayonara. This is a 997 from Kenwood. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the display of the 997 Kenwood on a 2008 Porsche Cayman
With BOSE.
with BOSE.